And for you NFL fans, it is truly the off season now. The Super Bowl is in the rearview mirror. And here we go, football fans. We've got a long wait until we see play on the field. But of course, every day is meaningful. And the news cycle never stops these days with the transfer portal humming and with recruiting, as Kirby Smart would let us know, 24/7, 365. Welcome into Trojan's Conquest Live. Here we are on a Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Our best goes out to our buddy Tim Prangley, who's under the weather tonight. Matt Zemek is here as always from Trojan's Wire. Catch Matt and Tim every day at Trojan's Wire. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. The Super Bowl once again was really interesting, and we'll talk about USC recruiting in a little bit. We'll kind of let our Trojan Nation gather. Some USC fans, myself included, we just finished watching Juju Watkins and the women's basketball team put away Arizona. It was 81-64 in the final minute. So people who are watching the game, we'll give them a few minutes to get a snack, and do what they need to do, and then they'll come here to the Voice of College Football in a few minutes. So we'll hit the recruiting stuff in a little bit for people making their way over from the women's basketball game. But the good starting point is the Super Bowl, because there are a number of things with a USC twist or tie-in that I thought of, and one is that when you see what Andy Reid is able to bring out in Patrick Mahomes, like that's a really important thing. And I say Andy Reid because a lot of people thought that Eric Bieniemy was the guy who was really maximizing Patrick Mahomes, and this year you did see some regression with Matt Nagy, coming over from the Bears after his failed tenure. And for most of the season, Nagy was not doing nearly as well as Bieniemy had done. So it was a fair argument to make. Like, I'm not slamming anyone who's saying that Bieniemy was like the guy. I'm not slamming that point of view, but we saw in the playoffs, Mahomes was Mahomes, and he certainly was Mahomes at the end of the Super Bowl. And like the Chiefs have done this several times. I'm not talking about winning the Super Bowl. I'm talking about starting slowly and then finishing with a flourish. This is now the Reid Mahomes era has not only produced 3 Super Bowl championships, but all 3 Super Bowls were won after being 10 points down. The Chiefs owned the fourth quarter in each of these 3 Super Bowls: 54 against the Jimmy G Niners, 57 against the Eagles, now 58 against the Brock Purdy Niners. So, this is a trend. You can't just say it's an aberration, it's an outlier. No, this is a trend. And so, the Chiefs lose Bieniemy, they lose Tyreek Hill, they lose, a lot of their high-end, shiny new toys at wide receiver. Rashee Rice was their best receiver this year. They still win it all. That tells you something about Andy Reid finding ways to put the pieces together to align the Rubik's Cube. And so that's all a very long way of saying Caleb Williams' NFL success, it's not just going to be him. He's just not going to walk onto any old NFL roster and be great. Because what if Patrick Mahomes went to the Carolina Panthers? What if Patrick Mahomes went to the pre-DeMeco Ryans Houston Texans? What if Patrick Mahomes, went to, another bottom-rung NFL organization without an elite head coach, without an organization that knew exactly what it was doing? What if he goes to an NFL team that has a Swiss cheese defense as opposed to, Steve Spagnuolo, now the first coordinator ever to win 4 Super Bowls. So many different pieces are in place to help Patrick Mahomes be as great as he's been. Now, make no mistake, he is the king right now. He is the ruler of the NFL, and he's the owner of those crunch time moments. But the defense carried the Chiefs most of the season, and the defense carried the Chiefs for most of Super Bowl 58. If the defense isn't lights out, if the defense doesn't allow just one touchdown to a very, very good San Francisco offense, an offense that regularly put up 30 or more over the course of the season. If that defense under Spags doesn't hold the fort as often as it did under pressure, if the Chiefs allow that 3rd and 5 completion just after the 2-minute warning, that's game over. Niners can just milk the clock. They kick a walk-off field goal. Mahomes doesn't have enough time to get the ball back. If the defense doesn't keep rising up and forcing field goals and getting stops, Mahomes isn't in position to win that Super Bowl at the very end. So that's not a diminishment of Mahomes. It's just saying that he needed help. He needed help from his defense. He needed help from the other pieces of the puzzle in Kansas City. And so Caleb Williams, he just can't walk onto an NFL field and be great. He needs the fit. He needs the coach. He needs the organization. And Mark, this is the voice of college football, not the voice of NFL football. But you know as well as I do. You don't even have to study the NFL all that closely to know that the Chicago Bears have been one of the worst run organizations in the NFL for the past several years and really for quite some time. And it's not an accident that they've struggled to get the most out of the various high-profile quarterbacks that they've drafted, that they've taken a chance on. And that's not even a negative verdict on Justin Fields. It's just that the organization doesn't surround its quarterbacks with the pieces they need. So what's to say that Caleb Williams, if he goes to Chicago, that he's going to be able to flourish? And, of course, the biggest fear and worry I have about Caleb Williams if he goes to Chicago, Matt Eberflus is going to be fired after 1 year. Unless that first year makes significant progress. If it's just same old sorry ASS Bears for another year, Eberflus is gone. So Caleb Williams is going to have 2 coaches in 2 seasons. And that is not a recipe for success. So in my mind, the best scenario for Caleb Williams, if he goes to Washington, he has Cliff Kingsbury. Now that could be good, but the Commanders are not the best run organization. I'm not thrilled with the Dan Quinn hire. They could have gotten someone better. Notably, Mark, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, he said, the guys who run the Commanders, they're a bunch of basketball guys. I'm not going to go there. So Josh Harris, the owner, he's the owner of the 76ers. So Ben Johnson, who seems to know his X's and O's, he seems to know situations, he seems to know people. He thinks the Commanders aren't serious about football. So I would not say that Caleb Williams would have a great situation. It would be better than the Bears, but I don't think it's a great situation in Washington if he goes to the Commanders, even though it'd be a homecoming to the DMV. I don't think that's a great situation. I think in New England at number 3, if the Patriots are willing to trade up with that defense that they have, and I know that Jared Mayo is not a proven head coach, but everyone inside the Patriots locker room and organization thinks that he's smart, he gets it, he's going to be a really good coach. I would say New England is a much better situation than Washington if you had to compare those two. But my ideal scenario for Caleb Williams is if the Minnesota Vikings are willing to put, all their poker chips in the middle of the table and they give the Bears a king's ransom for Caleb Williams. Consider this. You have a young offense-minded coach, Kevin O'Connell, who I think would be kind of, the Andy Reid for Caleb Williams. But beyond that, you have so many other pieces in place in Minnesota. They fixed their defense under Brian Flores, so you have that. Caleb Williams is not going to have Alex Grinch. He's going to have Brian Flores as his defensive coordinator if, under this hypothetical, he goes to the Vikings. And then you have Jordan Addison to throw to. So he gets Jordan Addison back. And we all saw how great Jordan Addison was for Caleb Williams in 2022 at USC. And then not only do you have Jordan Addison, you have Justin Jefferson on the other side of the field. So that to me, if the Vikings want to make a kingmaker type move to go all in on Caleb Williams, that to me is my ideal scenario. But then after that, I'd say the Patriots, then the Commanders, but the Bears is not a good outcome for Caleb Williams. So I hope there's an NFL team that's willing to trade up to number one, because Patrick Mahomes would be, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to a specific kind of player, but like he would have an ordinary career if he went to the Carolina Panthers. I mean, he has the natural talent, he has the gifts. We can see how much of a genius he is instinctually, but we all see that when bright, promising, talented, potential-filled quarterbacks go to bad NFL orgs, they usually don't escape that. The scars and the bad influences and the negative trajectory created by landing with the wrong organization, that usually overpowers the natural talent. You have to find the right fit. So watching the Super Bowl and seeing Andy Reid, regardless of his coordinator, regardless of the quality of his wide receivers in Kansas City, he still gets the most out of Patrick Mahomes. It just really underscored for me the need for the right fit in the NFL for Caleb Williams.
Folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is, of course, what we do here each and every Monday night with Matt Zemek and typically Tim Prangley. Trojan's Wire. We hope Tim is getting better. He's under the weather tonight. Super Bowl in the books. And Matt and I both love the NFL. Maybe with Tim not here, it gives us a couple more minutes to exchange some ideas and some thoughts about NFL football. And with the Super Bowl played last night, here are my two quick thoughts. And one is, I'll make it brief because it's not USC related, but I'm going to make the other one and bring it around to USC situation with Lincoln Riley. And one being that, of course, social media being what it is, the fan mentality being what it is, Kyle Shanahan was just beat up over just the way the team performed in the fourth quarter. Of course, this is a second time as a head coach that his team has lost a lead in the fourth quarter to the same franchise, of course. And then he was the offensive coordinator of the 28-3 blown lead. Although I don't think he had much to do with not burning the play clock that should have been done continually in that game. However, I'm going to stick up for Kyle Shanahan. Can I predict the future? No, I do my best in predicting the future, but can I truly predict the future? Of course not. But the man is 44 years old. I don't know if he's going to win a Super Bowl, but to just blanket statement, he can't win the big one. I saw that all over the place, Matt, and it led me to, you will be able to relate to this easily. Don Shula lost his first Super Bowl, and he lost his second Super Bowl was with the Dolphins. His first one with the Colts. He loses with the Dolphins. He didn't break through. They said, oh, Don Shula can't win the big one. Tom Landry lost what was the equivalent in NFL circles as Super Bowls, NFL championship games, kept losing in the playoffs, lost his first Super Bowl. He can't win the big one. Andy Reid. It's been a long time since Andy Reid has been a head coach, and he went to 3 straight NFC championship games. He lost a Super Bowl to the Patriots. It took him 20 years to win a Super Bowl. And if we want to take it to the collegiate level, the best example that I can think of would be Tom Osborne, who, of course, had his shot in '83, chose what was a noble decision to win it outright, didn't get it done, and then just was an inferior program to Miami and Florida State. And it was my thought in the late 80s, when is this Nebraska program ever going to break through? There's no way. They're losing these Orange Bowl games by 20 points to Miami and Florida State. Well, he broke through as well. So it can be done. So that's just my sidebar on Kyle Shanahan. But as it relates to Andy Reid and just looking at what we've seen these Chiefs teams do just in the last few years, as you alluded to, very offensive-minded team that carried it with Tyreek Hill with just speed and space and wanting to play up tempo and just emphasizing the offense. And they've been able to, without missing a beat, become a very defensive-oriented team. And so Andy Reid has been able to adapt to that. Bill Belichick is probably the master of being able to adapt a team from week to week. And we have seen various coaches. Steve Spurrier comes to mind at the college level, even though he didn't win at the highest level during his stay at South Carolina. But he went from fun and gun with Florida to a very defensive minded, run oriented team that didn't throw the ball much or well, but he got his biggest success there at South Carolina and any way beyond anything that they've experienced there in the history of South Carolina football, with 3 consecutive 11-win seasons, winning in a very different style than what Steve Spurrier would like. So whether Lincoln Riley can truly adapt to what the situation, the conference, the schedule, his personnel, all of that dictates what he should be doing with this USC team going forward, is going to be mighty interesting to see if it's more important for him to score 50 points a game or more important for him to win championships.
That's right. And that's why we saw the metamorphosis with this, complete 180 in terms of his defensive staff. He went from, hey, Alex Grinch, you have the keys to the defense. You do your thing, to, oh, I need excellence at every position, and I need accountability and developmental skills and strong player technique everywhere. And I need to convince head coaches and coordinators to come here and be position coaches. I mean, wow, just truly a complete 180. Like, this was not, a 30-degree, 45-degree change. This was a total flip, upside down, inside out, a completely diametrically different approach to defense from Lincoln Riley. And, people watching here at the Voice of College Football, like, we saw this in the chat every Monday, Mark. You know this. You were here. Tim Prangley was here. Like, we would see it every week in November and on into early December. Lincoln Riley's not going to change his spots. Lincoln Riley is who he is. Like, Lincoln Riley is set in his ways. Lincoln Riley is stubborn, never going to appreciate defense, never going to turn over and embrace a new philosophy. Sure looks like it. Like, if you were going to say, what would a philosophical change look like? It's going to look like this, with Eric Henderson, with Doug Belk, with Matt Entz, with Danton Lynn, retaining Taylor Mays. I mean, like, this is an all-star defensive staff. He went from having a staff with his buddies, people that he knew from Oklahoma, to going with a bunch of outsiders. Exactly the thing that so many skeptics thought Lincoln Riley would never do. But, I think the thing that, I saw this. I don't know about you, Mark, but I certainly saw this. Like, Lincoln Riley got humiliated last year. Like, he, at Oklahoma, he never lost more than 2 games. And last year at USC, he lost more than 2, but in the bowl game. So he still didn't lose more than 2 games in the regular season. This was his first taste of true humiliation as a head coach. 7-5. It was orders of magnitude worse than anything he ever went through at Oklahoma. So, like, that is something that we all, in retrospect, needed to appreciate more. That it's not just he failed to make the playoffs. It's not just that he failed to win the Pac-12. No, he was brought to his knees. He was embarrassed. And like, Oklahoma had the occasional embarrassing game under Riley. Whether it's in the playoff or also, during the regular season, like when the bottom would fall out at Kansas State or against Iowa State occasionally. But, like, in terms of a whole season, this was his first truly miserable season in which he fell, a million miles short of expectations. When you're competing at the highest level and you get humiliated and dressed down like that, the idea that, well, you're just going to keep doing what you're doing. No, of course you're going to change. Of course you realize how much money you're getting paid. You realize how much you're being entrusted with a blue blood football brand. You're not going to do nothing. Like, and like, Lincoln Riley deserves credit for what he's doing, but let's be measured in giving that credit. Like, if you get humiliated and you don't change significantly how you do business, you're not a serious person. And so Lincoln Riley's not this godlike figure for making these changes on defense. This is just like, this is normally how it's supposed to be. When you're a prominent coach and you get kicked to the curb and you realize that your methodology that you doubled down on by retaining Alex Grinch for 2023, when the methods that you doubled down on are convincingly destroyed and they're proven to not work, of course you're going to make big changes. And so it struck me as really weird that people thought, oh, Lincoln Riley's never going to change, like as though having this horrible failed season wasn't going to elicit any different turn or different flavor in terms of his philosophy. Now, having said that, having said how obvious and normal it is that Lincoln Riley would pivot and change, I am certainly was not expecting the defensive staff to be this good, this credentialed, this deep, this balanced. I mean, Lincoln Riley overshot even my expectations. Like I was expecting significant changes to be made, but like this has been even far greater than what I was expecting. Like I thought he'd hire a good defensive coordinator. Like I thought he would reach that bar. I thought he would go for someone really strong, and D'Anton Lynn meets that. But like he has just hit grand slams with these position coaches, and convincing guys to come from a head coaching level, Matt Entz, or a defensive coordinator level, Doug Belk, and to come from coaching Aaron Donald, Eric Henderson, and just being position coaches. Like that is a remarkable degree of salesmanship. And of course, Jen Cohen and the USC athletic department, they deserve credit for shelling out the dollars to make sure that USC and Riley could field this good of a defensive coaching staff. So parts of this were obvious. Like, as soon as that UCLA game ended, like I thought major changes were going to occur. But even then, I didn't know that it could possibly look this good and would represent this substantial a turnaround.
Yeah, UCLA offense that struggled just a week earlier, I believe, against the likes of Arizona State, scoring a touchdown, and then they rip up the USC defense, of course, and win the rivalry game. There's a number of folks making comments in the chat, and you mentioned, of course, D'Anton Lynn. And so USC dodges the bullet that was speculated in regards to looking at UCLA coaching candidates after Chip Kelly stepped away. I listed my 13 candidates and rated them 13 all the way up to number one, and put D'Anton Lynn in a position where I thought that he was the best selection of non-current head coaches. But UCLA goes, now I hope for UCLA, and nobody wants to hear this here, but for them, I hope that they truly made that move for Deshaun Foster for the right reasons. Like, we believe that we have a guy here who has a wealth of coaching experience at a position coach's role, and who loves the university, who knows what we're all about, and who can lead us, who has the type of, who's a rising star, the Marcus Freeman kind of move, rather than just, we can save $2.5 million a year by hiring Deshaun Foster and not going after somebody that we truly could take into the Big Ten with a fighting chance of competing. I hope that wasn't, sure, finances always go into a decision of that magnitude, but still, hopefully for their sake and for college football's sake and for them competing in the Big Ten, that was more of the decision. But the good news for USC, of course, Lynn is still with the Trojans.
Yeah, so let's spend a few minutes laughing at UCLA here on the USC channel at the Voice of College Football. Let's just stop and consider just how badly UCLA played its cards. And I hope that Tony Siracusa, Tony Bruin I hope he's had some really fine quality liquor the past 48 hours, because he has to be absolutely distraught at what's happened here, the clown car in Westwood, because, Cal dump trucked UCLA. Let's remember that. Cal dump trucked the Bruins in UCLA's final game in Pasadena, and you're thinking, okay, that's got to be it, right? Like you can't enter the Big Ten on the heels of that game against a very ordinary Cal team. That should have been it. Morale in the program was low. Chip Kelly remember, UCLA lost at home to an Arizona State team with a billion injuries before the UCLA game. Then the Bruins get up for USC, and then they come right back down to the bottom. So like that should have told everyone, okay, they rallied around the flag to beat the hated Trojans, but really the quality of that program, the quality of offense, the quality of talent, the quality of the overall operation, nowhere near ready for the Big Ten. It should have been a relatively easy decision. They don't do it. And what happens just like a week and a half later? D'Anton Lynn goes to USC because he saw the sinking ship at UCLA. Get me out of here! And he was so bent on getting out of there, getting out of Westwood, that he went to the rival school in Los Angeles. And of course, we just have to mention the obvious. If Chip Kelly gets fired, D'Anton Lynn could be right now UCLA's head coach, and the trajectory of USC's off season would have been very different. But even if D'Anton Lynn wasn't UCLA's first choice, like I think, Mark, but just based on the timeline, like Jonathan Smith had already committed to be Michigan State head coach when that Chip Kelly coached that Cal game. Jonathan Smith was already on his way to East Lansing because, remember, the first rumors of a Jonathan Smith move to Michigan State surfaced before the Civil War kicked off, before that Oregon State game happened on Thanksgiving Friday. So Jonathan Smith was out the door to Michigan State. UCLA was not in play for Jonathan Smith. But based on the timeline, a couple other guys who were in play for UCLA had the Bruins fired Chip Kelly. Sean Lewis. Sean Lewis was not hired by San Diego State until a few days later. I mean, imagine UCLA with Sean Lewis, who got time under Deion Sanders at Colorado. So he had exposure to the Pac-12 and the teams that are in that conference, including the ones going to the Big Ten. Sean Lewis would have been a great hire for UCLA had it fired Chip Kelly. And you could come up with some other names, in terms of coaches who were actually hired at the very end of November and early December. And then, of course, the other spins of the carousel that you've seen with Washington and Alabama. I mean, UCLA would have had so many better options than Deshaun Foster had it fired Chip Kelly. So just the misplay of that is significant. And here's one more piece of the puzzle at UCLA. There's a guy named Mark Schipper. He blogs at his own website. It's called Fifth Down College Football. You should give it a read. He's really good. He's really smart. He follows UCLA very closely, much as Tony Siracusa does. So Mark Schipper has tweeted out a lot of tweets on Monday, talking about the complexities and the nuances of the situation at UCLA. Part of his tweets point to Chip Kelly tried to really hold AD Martin Jarmond to account. Chip Kelly wanted Martin Jarmond as UCLA AD to lock in his assistants, to take care of his assistants and make sure they got paid. And he succeeded in doing that. And that's part of why Jarmond and the UCLA administration felt beholden to Chip Kelly. It's why they were paralyzed and they didn't make a move to fire him at the very end. And that is also part of why Deshaun Foster got hired. It's because UCLA felt it needed to promote from within so that they have a guy who knows how to work with all of these assistants whom they all just gave a salary bump to. So it's not as though, you said, you hope that this move by UCLA was solely for, we believe this guy is in the best possible, gives us the best possible chance to win. It doesn't really check that box, at least not completely. That this is the product of some other administrative decisions that UCLA felt beholden to, that aligned all these things up in terms of securing this staff with higher pay numbers. And they felt, well, we can't go outside the family. We need to keep this coaching staff intact by elevating one of the members of that staff. So it's definitely not how you'd go about it if you're thinking about championships, if you're thinking about winning and competing at the highest level. So it is amateur hour in Westwood. And while USC fans should indeed be very happy about this, just looking at it objectively, it's a sorry situation in Westwood.
Matt, the narrative for these four schools entering the Big Ten seems to be pretty clear for me. At the top is Oregon. All systems go, firing on all systems, recruiting is at an all-time high, possibly. Dan Lanning certainly recommitted to the program, said, Alabama, forget it. I am committed here. We're doing this. Everything's on the positive trajectory in Eugene. USC's in a place where, okay, coming off this poor 7-5, 8-5 season with the bowl win, but as you alluded to, shoot, you could have thrown out just about any team in the Power Five, and they would have gone 6-0 in the first 6 games. So all the games were lined up. They pretty much dropped all of them. Well, they did. All the marquee games that they had on the schedule, almost lost to Cal. So just a disappointing season. So they've addressed the issues. They were aggressive and assertive in addressing those issues. Will they work out? They look favorable on paper. So that's where USC is. Wait and see. They address the issues. Now they have to execute, because we've seen all-star coaching staffs put together in the past and for whatever reason did not work out. Washington and UCLA go in with a downward trajectory, but UCLA is the creator of their issues. Washington, it's understandable. They were rolling. They had their guy, Kalen DeBoer, bails for Alabama, and it's kind of come apart to a certain extent from a roster standpoint and losing personnel since then. Jed Fish, though, has proven capable at Arizona. You would think, although maybe 2023 could be a rough ride, that it's still a sound coaching hire for them, and he should be able to do good things at Washington. UCLA, though, on the very low end of all of that, they lose their head coach who left them hung out to dry. They could have had a better selection. They chose to stay with Chip Kelly. They didn't want to pay the buyout. They kept him around. He doesn't leave until well after the season. They don't get a good replacement. They lose their future quarterback in Dante Moore. Really nothing going right for UCLA. And that's at least where I see these four programs as they enter the Big Ten.
I think that's an accurate summation. That particularly like Washington, there's only so much the Huskies could have done. And this is one of those deals where a coach is highly unlikely to leave, except if one or two jobs come open. I mean that is like the eternal coaching carousel plot twist and nuance that 95% of the jobs in the country a coach won't go for, but if one or two specific ones do open, the coach would, despite having everything going just right the way he wants at that job, one or two jobs will lead him to pack up and leave. So like Washington is uniquely unlucky in that regard. That said, Washington just had a 14-1 season, a conference title, a college football playoff semifinal win. So, even though Washington's been uniquely unlucky, it had that taste of elite football. It had that taste of great glory. I mean, here at USC, we've never been to the college football playoff. Like, we haven't sniffed a national title since 2008, the Pete Carroll era, in terms of like being in the mix. 15 years since our last sniff of a natty. And so even though Washington, got a gut punch, like I know a lot of fans who would say, I'll take a 14-1 season if that means that we suffer for the next 3 or 4 years. Because at USC, it's been 15 years since we've had that kind of season where you're a heavyweight, you're in the fray, you're in the hunt. We need one of those seasons, and so Washington had one of those seasons, and so it certainly makes the bitter taste of what happened with Kalen DeBoer go down a lot easier. So like Washington's in a very unique case on a number of levels. But then Oregon, Oregon's really well situated. There's no question about it. But I would say that Oregon's going to need to win a conference championship. Like, I think if Oregon doesn't win the Big Ten in one of the next few years, and doesn't at least, with the 12-team playoff, Oregon can fail to win the Big Ten, yet still get an at-large berth, no problem. If Oregon does not win the Big Ten or reach the playoff semifinals, like, I don't think it's going to be interesting to see how fans calibrate expectations in terms of, making the playoff but not winning a playoff game. It's different in a 14 playoff from a 12-team playoff. If you're losing a first round game, just how much of a success is that season going to feel like if you have been recruiting and investing the way Oregon has? It's probably not going to feel all that special. I think Oregon would need to at least win a playoff game if it doesn't win the Big Ten in the next few years for everyone to think that Dan Lanning is hitting the mark. So that's kind of the tension point that still exists in Eugene and what is otherwise an excellent situation. Now, I would say at USC, because you don't have the recruiting and the portaling set up the same way that Oregon does with NIL, at USC, just making the 12-team playoff would be amazing. I think Oregon making the 12-team playoff and not winning a playoff game, that would feel like a disappointment, especially for Uncle Phil. He wants to see a national championship before he leaves this earth. But at USC, just given the frustrations of this past season and given that 15-year drought in terms of not being in the hunt at a top level, I think just making the playoff in 2024 would be absolutely outstanding. And people are going to say, wait, wasn't USC in the hunt for the playoff in 2017 when it won the Pac-12? No, it wasn't. When USC lost to Notre Dame in South Bend in the middle of the year, remember that the game
Like 5 touchdowns.
By a lot. I know it was a lot.
I think it was 49-14.
Yeah, when USC lost at Notre Dame by a bunch in mid-October, the playoff dream died. So USC did not come close to being in the playoff mix. The 2008 team was a lot closer in terms of being in the mix, and that was, of course, in the BCS. Not USC probably gets into a 4-team playoff that year if we had one. Again, I do consider 2008 to be the last year that USC was really in the mix for the national championship in a way that the 2016 team, of course, never was because it lost its 3 games early. And then the 2017 team, as I said, getting dump trucked by Notre Dame in the middle of the season, like that was it. The USC was not a national title contender after mid-October. So because of the length of time that USC has not been nationally relevant at the highest level, coming close in 2022, but just not having gone so long through the Clay Helton reign of error, just making the playoff would be absolutely fantastic. Whereas I think Oregon, you're expecting to win at least one game in that 12-team playoff.
Clay Helton's first season was 2014, correct?
He was made permanent head coach just before the 2015 Pac-12 championship game against Christian McCaffrey and Stanford. So yeah, 2014 was Sark.
Yeah.
But 2015 is when he was elevated to. He was interim and then he was elevated to permanent head coach just before the 2015 Pac-12 title game.
So USC fans, had we known at the time, just think about setting the stage for we're going to have 10 years of a 4-team playoff, and Washington's going to make it twice. Oregon's going to get there. TCU is going to get to a playoff. Cincinnati is going to get to a playoff. USC is not going to get to a playoff. You've also hit on, Matt, what I think is an interesting conversation regarding expectations, not necessarily just tied to 2024, but overall expectations. I see it as Ohio State and USC have the expectations in the Big Ten. And I'll offend some Michigan fans to a certain extent, but I talk to them every day. And most of them understand that although they have jumped up with 2 national championships in the last 25 years, They have lived in 9-3 range when it's not been Rich Rod or Brady Hoke the rest of the time. They have not been an elite program. Historically, they are, of course, but they have not lived in elite status. And I understand USC has not for about half of that time as well. But we know what USC can be, and we know what the expectations are. And Ohio State has been one of the 2 or 3 elites of college football, whatever your time frame of the last 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. So I see USC and Ohio State as and especially Ohio State, of course, going into this season. If they don't win the Big Ten or backdoor into a playoff, since it is a 12 team, and then make a serious run at the national championship, that is a complete disappointment. USC may not be prepared to do it this year, but make no mistake, that is the standard of the program. And then you have these various levels of, depending on who you talk to, from the Michigan camp, from Penn State. Oregon's an interesting one that you just reviewed in regards to where their expectation should be, and they're really gunning for elite status in college football. And then you've got a group of Wisconsin, Washington, Iowa, where they would hope to have some kind of outside shot in a good season to reach a playoff at 10-2.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting that earlier in the show you talked about Steve Spurrier at South Carolina. One thing that's worth remembering about that, and I'm tying this into your conversation about expectations at various schools. South Carolina's 3-year, 11-game winning streak from 2011 through 2013, it preceded the New Year's Six by 1 year. If the New Year's Six, which began in 2014, had existed in 2011, then Spurrier would have made 3 New Year's Six bowls. But as it is, South Carolina has never made one of the king size bowl games because the timing was just before the New Year's Six, added that one extra bowl that South Carolina would have made in each of those 3 seasons. So it was just exquisitely bad timing. But anyway, that does tie into, at Iowa, Wisconsin, those programs in the Big Ten. Like getting to a New Year's Six bowl is a really, really good year for those programs. Fan bases, I'm sure that those fan bases get tired of going to the Outback, whatever that's called now, ReliaQuest, whatever. It's still the Outback or Hall of Fame for the older college football junkies. Why do we have to go to the Citrus or the Outback Bowl? Like we go there every other year. Gosh, I'd love to go to the Orange. I'd love to go to the Sugar. That's where Iowa, Wisconsin fans would love to be on a more consistent basis. I mean, when Iowa went to the Rose Bowl, Iowa would absolutely own the building. Like when Iowa played Stanford in the 2016 Rose Bowl, like that was like 2/3 Iowa at that game. So that does play into the various expectations for Big Ten programs. And as you said, USC, the point that you've made so many times, and it's correct, is that when USC gets it absolutely right, Pete Carroll, John McKay, the Trojans max out. Like when it's great, it's really great. That few programs max out the way USC does when it has everything in perfect alignment. But the problem is it's been elusive to have that perfect alignment. And we thought we were close with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. But of course, Lincoln Riley didn't hire Danton Lynn and this elite coaching staff a year ago. And that is the great what if. That is the great lamentation that Riley didn't give Caleb Williams this defensive coaching staff. It's painful to think about that Lincoln Riley couldn't bring those two forces together for one season. That leaves a hole in the gut.
Our guy Joey Foster's here. Joey, we appreciate you being in the chat. So you can catch Joey and Shane on the West Virginia channel and the Big 12 channel. They do a Big 12 Fan Zone show and a West Virginia Fan Zone show, which aired tonight. So head on over to the West Virginia channel and check it out there. And Joey's already pushing us toward 10,000 subs here on the USC channel. Appreciate that, Joey. We got to get to 5,000, but I like your thinking. That's how we like to think here. what USC has been able to do here just in the past week is, even though the traditional National Signing Day has been cast aside as being insignificant, there were a few stragglers out there, and USC took advantage to close out a class that is not going to wow people that are locked into recruiting rankings. I still think that they're extremely meaningful. 18th to 20th in the country, in that range, about 5th in the Big Ten, but a couple of significant late signings last Wednesday, Matt.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the storylines for the arrivals of Ratumana Bulabulavu, the pass rusher, and then linebacker Jaden Walker, several storylines. I think what makes these additions important, defense, that they're coming on the defensive side of the ball. That's where USC needs more reinforcements, although like USC can use another offensive tackle or two. But still, by and large, USC needs more help on defense than offense. So these are defensive reinforcements. The other thing, defensive balance, in that you're getting a pass rusher and you're getting a linebacker. So you're not duplicating at any one spot. You're getting help at multiple levels of the defense. A third storyline, these are both Big Ten flips or Big Ten changes. Bulabulavu was a decommit from Washington. And again, Washington is now a Big Ten football program, right? So you're taking away from a Big Ten competitor there. And Jaden Walker was a flip from Michigan State. So Jonathan Smith doesn't get a linebacker. So not only is USC adding, but it's taking from two of its competitors in the 2024 Big Ten. So really, on a number of levels, that's the value of these additions. And then, of course, the other part, which I will consistently bring up whenever I'm talking about new USC defensive recruits, you're getting guys who are going to be coached by good coaches. With Tackett, we saw this with Tackett Curtis. We saw this with Domani Jackson. I don't have a dim view of them as players. I have a dim view of the coaches who couldn't develop them. Alex Grinch, Dante Williams, they are out of here. And we now have really good developmental coaches in place. So, it was hard to get too excited for defensive recruits these past few years because you worried, but is Alex Grinch going to be able to develop them? Now we don't have that worry. Now we don't have that headache, that uncertainty, that cartoon rain cloud hovering over. Now you know that these defensive prospects coming in, they're going to get quality coaching. So that makes me very confident that these new pieces, you're going to see a much higher success rate. Like nothing in recruiting is guaranteed, but I would think that on balance, you're going to see USC hit a higher percentage, in terms of splashes versus busts. Now that it has the defensive coaching staff, it's going to turn Bulabulavu into a good player. It's going to turn Jaden Walker into a good player. And also, there's the reality that Isaiah Rubin. It was never felt that the defensive back was going to go anywhere else but USC. But we just had the lingering reality that he hadn't actually put his ink on paper, finally did that. So everyone can exhale with Isaiah Rubin. So USC is getting reinforcements at each level of its defense, and knowing that good defensive coaches are going to develop these guys. That's really part of the value. It's not just adding the depth and the bodies and the balance, but it's also knowing that they're going to be coached up right.
Our buddies Joey and Jackson reminding everyone that we've got merch for everyone. I believe the link's in the chat. If not, we will get it in the chat. And we've got some new USC merch coming from the Voice of College Football as well. So check it out. And again, Tim, we miss you tonight. Get well, buddy. Matt, we understand that you were on the Ocho tonight.
Yeah, so John D'Adamo of the Michigan channel at the Voice of College Football, had me on for a half hour, and he asked me what I was most concerned about with USC heading into 2024, and I told him that I think the real pivot point, the ultimate tension point, where if it goes in the right way, USC can be awesome. And if it goes the wrong way, USC is going to linger in mediocrity. the answer I gave to John on the Ocho at the Michigan channel was Josh Henson. I think Josh Henson and the way he develops the offensive line, and of course, we'll see if he can add a piece to the puzzle in the spring transfer portal. I think that has so much to do with how well USC can be or will be in 2024. And the thing I also pointed out to John, which longtime watchers of this show know, but I'm going to say it again just in case there are some new faces in the crowd. Joe DiMaggio would say, I need to play hard every day because I never know when a kid's going to be watching me for the first time. So kind of the same ethos here. I don't know if someone's watching me for the first time here at the Voice of College Football. The thing that I've said over and over again, in terms of Josh Henson and the USC offensive line is that, if you're a Benny Wiley skeptic, as I am, it wasn't just the failure to develop the defense and get strong man-eating monsters on defense. It was also that the offensive line didn't perform all that well in 2023. So how the offensive line, it's going to have something to say about Benny Wiley, not just Josh Henson. And so if that position group knocks it out of the park, then we can know that Benny Wiley's on the right track. Then we can know that Josh Henson's on the right track. And because Lincoln Riley has fully repaired the defensive staff, that would tell me everything's in alignment with this coaching staff at USC. So the offensive line remains my number one pressure point. I don't think anything could possibly change that unless there's like an injury at quarterback or some other kind of seismic development. How that offensive line performs is really the number one question for me. I don't know about anybody else, but for me, that is the number one question right now at USC.
All we do is win, 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 win. Less than 20 subs from 5,000. Yes, 92 in the chat, 112 now in the chat. So if we get a number of you to just subscribe, it doesn't cost anything. It's an easy thing to do to help support the channel. Please hit the like button as well. Support us here at the Voice of College Football. We do all that we can here to deliver great content. And I thank Matt and Tim more than anyone because they really make this channel go for us. So it's been great to have Matt here for now a couple of years, and Tim, and these guys have been just phenomenal in building this channel. All right. Is there anything else? I've been checking out the comments, both that have come in this week, but not coming across anything that we haven't really hit on. And then also anything in the chat. I don't see anything that necessarily we need to hit unless you see something, Matt.
I think the only other thing is, did Ohio State come out ahead with Chip Kelly as opposed to Bill O'Brien? That's an interesting Big Ten talking point. And just for me, I would say that Chip Kelly, even though he's lost like his best fastball relative to when he was at Oregon and he was crushing everybody, even though he's lost his fastball a little bit, I still rate him better than Bill O'Brien. And the reason I say that is because, Bill O'Brien did help Nick Saban get to the national championship game in 2021. So he didn't do a bad job, but did he do an elite job? And the thing that we have to remember about Bill O'Brien in that 2021 season at Alabama is that if Auburn's Tank Bigsby doesn't go out of bounds in the last 2 minutes, Auburn beats Alabama. And it doesn't just beat Alabama. That game would have ended 10-3. Alabama would have scored 3 points in the Iron Bowl in a must-win situation in a rivalry game with Bryce Young at quarterback. Bill O'Brien, he helped get Alabama to the title game. So he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't special. He did not maximize Bryce Young's talents in 2021 at Alabama. And I look at Chip Kelly and when he had, a fully loaded UCLA offense, when he had DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Zach Charbonnet, he had the great QB running back combo at UCLA in 2022. That UCLA offense roared. And of course, they roasted an Alex Grinch defense against USC, but they were really good throughout that season, for most of that season. They might have had one or two clunkers, like the Arizona game that year was a clunker, but for the most part, that 2022 UCLA offense was really good. Chip Kelly got a lot out of it. I think Chip Kelly being able to work with Ohio State's skill, Ohio State's resources, Ohio State's athletes, I think that's going to work out really well. I think the only question is really, it's less about Chip Kelly. It's more about, does Will Howard deliver the goods? But I think that Chip Kelly will provide a plan and a scheme and play design that's going to work out better than Bill O'Brien on balance. I don't think it's a rout. I don't think it's a blowout, but I do think Chip Kelly is a little bit better for Ohio State than Bill O'Brien, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm basically there with you, Matt, but I would state it this way. I'm not quite as convinced as you are, but I'm certainly not arguing Bill O'Brien over Chip Kelly, but I'm just maybe not as convinced. I'll put it this way. This could not have worked out any better for Ohio State in regards to timing. That's for sure. For them to lose Bill O'Brien and fall right into Chip Kelly, this is exactly Ryan Day. For anybody that's not knowledgeable about Ryan Day's past and his background and experience, he played for Chip Kelly. He coached under Chip Kelly. They are like that. And so he got the guy that he wanted. For me, the Bill O'Brien hire was a good one in that, not that I think of him as being one of the great offensive minds in college football or in football period, but a good offensive mind, but also the adult in the room that has been a head coach that Ryan Day can say, take the offense, run my offense. We were already hearing items out of Columbus from the people that we have on our Ohio State shows that Bill O'Brien, even 2 and 3 weeks into it, was already cleaning up terminology and just simplifying things, just an extra experienced eye to put on certain aspects of quality control. And I think Chip Kelly's going to be able to do the same thing. And yeah, they've got it set up at Ohio State, but I think you nailed it. Even though they have offensive line concerns to clean up, I think that they will. They have the best quarterback room in the country, but unfortunately, possibly unfortunately for them and anybody that has a deep quarterback room, that's the only position. You just need one guy. It doesn't help that your fourth guy is better than anybody that's a fourth string quarterback in the country. Will Howard needs to be, because he's most likely going to be the guy, and they'll have two definite just studs as freshmen, but they're most likely not going to factor into this season. So it's about Will Howard being not good for Kansas State, not that tier good, because he was a good quarterback for Kansas State, but that's not going to cut it.
That's right. And of course, part of the irony about talking about Will Howard is that, he could have been a USC quarterback. I mean, it was felt for a few weeks in December that he was going to be USC's next quarterback, but it never fully happened. And of course, Miller Moss delivers the amazing Holiday Bowl. But this is a fascinating question. And I'm sure, Mark, that in the off season, as we go along, that we'll devote perhaps a whole show to it. Miller Moss or Will Howard? Who's the better quarterback? Who's going to have the better 2024 season? And the commentary here for you and for everyone watching here at the Voice of College Football is, can you answer that question confidently in either direction? I don't think you can.
Nope.
And that's a commentary in itself.
And yes, for a school in USC that, again, you can go back however many weeks when we had discussions, and based on all the intel at the time, it looked like Will Howard was about an 85% certainty to USC, and that he would certainly be the starting quarterback, of course. And now he comes to Columbus, and he most likely will be the starting quarterback in Columbus. Well, Ohio State is going to most likely be the number 2 ranked team in the country to start the season. But to be able to put up a Miller Moss against a Will Howard and say who's the better quarterback, and none of us reasonable people can make a determination on that. I certainly can't. I don't know. That's not definite.
And the other thing is, just as a purely objective matter to Mark and everyone watching here at the Voice of College Football, on a purely objective level, when we talked about Will Howard possibly coming to USC, I wasn't dazzled. I wasn't thrilled, but I did say I think he's a little bit underrated because his cumulative stats at Kansas State need to be seen contextually because Kansas State had injuries. Skylar Thompson, the other guys in the quarterback room at that program in the past few years, Will Howard had to play a number of his games at Kansas State as an emergency quarterback, as a fill-in quarterback on the spot. When he was younger, he wasn't fully ready for the QB1 role, so he committed a lot of mistakes, but that was on-the-job training. It wasn't as the anointed, established number one. He played a lot of his games as a backup, so the numbers look rougher than his actual level of play, balanced against his level of experience. So I think Howard is underrated, but yet he wasn't the guy I really ever wanted. I didn't see him as the prize catch for USC, but I'm also not going to talk him down because I still maintain that he's a little bit underrated generally. It's just that, leading a blue blood such as Ohio State or USC, maybe that's a little bit out of his league. So, it's a real interesting tension point. But USC fans, for a while, they were of the mindset of, oh, this could be our guy. And when a quarterback is on the verge of joining you, you're trying to convince yourself this guy's going to work out. This guy's going to be good. This guy's going to make things happen. So it's gonna be we need to be honest with ourselves in terms of evaluating Will Howard, being honest with how we've seen him in the past and how we see him as he evolves at Ohio State. It's going to be really fascinating to watch.
The quarterback pool in the transfer portal this offseason was extremely deep, but it wasn't elite. Will Howard was arguably the best quarterback. The best was probably Cam Ward. I think most scouts would determine Cam Ward to have been the highest, unless I'm missing somebody, Matt, that Cam Ward was considered to be the best and Will Howard probably second. But there was just a deep pool of KJ Jefferson, Will Rogers. We could just go on and on. Dillon Gabriel.
Dillon Gabriel for me. I think he's a winner. And I know some USC fans aren't that sold on him. I would take Dillon Gabriel over Will Howard and Cam Ward. I would say this with Cam Ward. Cam Ward's ceiling, when he has it going, it's kind of like your point about USC. When he's on, he's really on. He is an absolute destroyer. But Dillon Gabriel has been a consistent, proven winner over his career. He's won at multiple schools. He won at UCF, won at Oklahoma. I think he's going to do really well at Oregon. I would personally take Dillon Gabriel over Will Howard and Cam Ward, but I know plenty of other people would disagree. But I think your larger point is that there were a lot of options at QB in the transfer portal, but not really rock stars on the order of what Caleb Williams was and what Michael Penix turned out to be.
Yeah, exactly. That the top end wasn't Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, those guys, but it was an extremely deep, we're talking 15 Power 5 starting quarterbacks in the portal to be had. But again, good quarterbacks, but not
not a lot of great, but a ton of very good.
Yeah. One topic that we could hit on at any point, Matt, we won't do it tonight, but it hit me just a second ago because we're delivering a TV rating series over on the main channel, folks. So if you're into those kind of things, we are going through all the conferences. We are breaking down TV ratings. And for those people that the feedback has been 98% positive, but for those few detractors out there that are bringing up things like, Mark, you don't know what you're doing and you're not looking at the network or the time slot. Worked in TV for a long time. Look at last off-season series. I posted that's what we bring. We bring it all together at the end. I understand the impact of the time slot and the network and so forth. We cover all the bases. Don't worry about it. But for right now, we're just going through the particular conferences. And USC fans, if there's one thing that you can count on that just hit me in moving to the Big Ten, more people will be watching USC football this year. There's no doubt about that. A lot more people.
Because none of those games will be on Pac-12 Network, baby.
All right, Joey, we appreciate you. He says, what's your greatest thought of the voice of college football? Mine is the fact that I never knew fight on until the voice of college football, or go blue until Mark united us all. Fight on, Mark. Thank you for that, Joey. I appreciate that. Every so often, somebody will tell me that, oh, I've met a lot of good people through just hanging out in your chat, and or I know so much more about these teams or these conferences. So it makes me feel good that I know that even if you don't agree with what I say, that you can find some some acquaintances and some friends and build some relationships here. And we often call it a community, and that's what we are here at the Voice of College Football. Matt, what's going on at Trojan's Wire?
Well, just minutes before I came on the air here for this week's show, USC women's basketball played a rare Monday night game. They usually play games Friday, Sunday in the Pac-12, but they had a game on Monday, and it wasn't on Pac-12 Network. It was on ESPN2, so I got to watch it. Trojans won. So NFL season's over, and now the two seasons that are beginning at USC are Juju Watkins season and baseball season. And Tim Prangley, of course, is going to be my baseball beat writer. USC starts its season on Friday. And for the USC fans in the chat, and I know there are a lot of USC baseball fans here, the Saturday USC baseball game is going to be on MLB Network, not MLB TV, the streaming service. It's going to be on actual MLB Network television. So you'll get to see your Trojans on Saturday. And then, we're going to be Caleb Williams NFL Draft Central for the next few months, obviously in terms of USC football stories, and obviously the spring ball, and then of course the spring portal on April 16th. April is going to be a hugely busy month, but really for the next few weeks, it's going to be a lot of Caleb Williams coverage, especially with the NFL season over and more machinations occurring in the NFL and plotting out Caleb Williams' future. That's kind of what we're doing because, I don't consider what I do at Trojans Wire to be journalism. It's more like analysis, and of course it's content creation. Like we're in the furnace, we're in the furnace and we're trying to keep shoveling the coal in, keep that furnace fed. That's the online content business. So Caleb Williams is going to be our content engine, especially for the next few weeks and for much of the next few months here at Trojans Wire.
Many of you have been kind in calling me a journalist at times. I have been a journalist at other times in my career, but I am not a journalist now. We are a content creating analysis business as well here at the Voice of College Football. By the way, Matt, what time's the game on Saturday, the baseball game?
5 p.m. Pacific, I believe. It's either 4 or 5. So it's like late afternoon, early evening in Los Angeles. It's against Grand Canyon University.
This probably won't happen because I'm always doing something, but I got to say that I'm a baseball junkie from way back. Now, I don't watch the sport like I used to, but from the time I was 8 years old until about 5 years ago, I was the guy that knew everybody's rosters top to bottom and every statistic known to mankind. And I could just sit and watch a baseball game. My goodness. I had the MLB package every year since 2004. All the games can't get enough of it.
Well, and I know, Mark, from our conversations that you remember watching Len Barker's 1981 perfect game for the Cleveland Indians against the Toronto Blue Jays. So like that marks you as a serious baseball fan right there.
Yes. Rick Manning made the final catch off the bat of Ernie Witt. Yes, for that one. Great stuff. Matt and I, we will have to talk some baseball someday. But Matt, we appreciate you. Of course, without you and Tim, our USC channel is nothing. So thank you so much for all that you do.
And we certainly miss Tim. He is the heartbeat of Trojan Nation with his passion. So we hope that Tim, who's he called me this afternoon. He says, "Hey, I can't be with John Diadamo on the Ocho and the Michigan channel. I can't be on tonight's show." So I had to make sure to lock it down. Been a busy night for me because I watched the USC women's game, pivoted right here, like just kind of on a swivel here at the Voice of College Football.
This is a guy that never forgets anything. I didn't know what he was talking about there for a second, but I told a story the other night of hanging out with Carl Ravitch and Barry Larkin talking, and it was actually, I couldn't think of who it was at the time. It was Manny Acta, former Indians manager, hanging out in the Baseball Tonight studio because the baseball game that was on was going like 14 innings. And I was checking on, I had camera operators that were on staff reporting to me and so forth. And so I hung out, ended up talking like baseball for 90 minutes with those guys. It was phenomenal. Yes, Jackson,
That's
thanks.
pretty sweet. That's pretty
Good
sweet.
stuff. All right, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Make it on back next Monday. And our next show here at the Voice of College Football is going to be Iowa Hawkeyes live at 5:30 Eastern on Tuesday. So we'll see you then.